Good afternoon, teacher, and good afternoon, classmates. I hope everyone is doing good. Today, my group members, Sai Savanita, Chan Sok Heng, and Im Jae Jin, and I, Pana Ania, are doing our presentation, which is about what is deviance and the symbolic interactionist perspective. Here is about our lesson. It is part 3 and the theme is about crime and punishment. And here is our content. We divided into two parts. The first one is about what is deviance. And this part we include 3 points. First is about how norm makes social life possible. And second is about sanctions. Last is about competing explanation of deviance. Second part, it is about the symbolic interactionist of perspective. In this part, we also include 3 points. Differential association, B, control theory, and the last one is labeling theory. On the top of this slide, these are our aims. We have 2 points. First one is to have better understanding about deviance and social control. Last one, to have better understanding about the symbolic interactionist perspective and its 3 theories. Without any further delay, let's move to what is deviance. Deviance is the violation of norm or rules or expectations. To make it easier to understand, it is just like the quality of not being usual and of being generally considered to be unacceptable. Or we can say that it is the fact or state of diverging from usual or accepted standard, especially in social behavior. Let, let's take a look at these two pictures. They are just a picture, but they clearly reflect to our real society. Like in picture on the right side, show that society always inspire us a lot, such as be unique, be yourself, or do whatever we want. In contrast, when we do, they just mock or laugh at us or consider us as a persons who do not conform to prevailing ideas or practices in their behavior of youth. For the pictures on the left side, it is not much different from the first one. When you are different from them, they will blame you or judge you for not being the same. However, there is no one standard which is set for everyone to follow because in this world does not have a cultural universal, and person to person, group to group, and country to country, they are all different, especially the perspective or opinion. One more thing, according to our course book, sociologists use the term deviant non-judgmentally to refer to um, any acts to which people respond negatively. But it does not mean that sociologists agree that somebody's actions or behavior is bad. It is just what people think, or they, or just they judge it negatively. For the next point, Nita will responsible for them.
Okay, thank you, Ania. So good afternoon, teacher, and hello to all classmates. My name is Saiswanita. Today I would like to explain briefly about 3 parts, which is how norm make society a social life possible. The second one about sanctions, and the last one is about competing explanation of deviant. sociobiology, physiology, and sociology. Now let's move to the first point. How norm make social life possible? First of all, what is norm? As you have already studied in cultural lesson, norm is an expectations or rule a rule of behavior that reflects or enforce behavior. Norm make our life predictable by making behavior predictable. Um, we are socialized to follow norm, play basic role that society assigns us. Moreover, norm brings social order, which means a group customary way of doing things that people depend on to keep things normal, which means social arrangement. Example, you expect the grocery store clerk to sell you what you want to buy, not to tell you there is an additional $20 fee for the certain customer of the day, and you are it because you are used to our customary way of doing things. Norm also bring group develop a system of social control, formal and informal way of enforcing norm. And there are two type of social control, which is informal, example, rule, social embarrassments, if you don't follow the norm, and the formal social control, example, law, police, military, for not following norm, example, prison or accusation. The second one is about sanction. Sanction refer to the reactions people receive for following or breaking norm. There are two type of sanctions, which are negative sanction and positive sanction. Negative sanction is expression of disapproval for breaking a norm that can rank from fun to an accusation, or we can say that negative norm are a punishment for breaking norm. Most negative sanctions are informal. Example for negative sanction can be include embarrassment, shame, disapproval, social discriminations, and accusations, as well as more formal sanctions such as uh, penalty and fine. And the positive sanction is a reward or positive reaction for uh, following norm, ranking for from a smile to a pride. Example for positive sanction can be include celebrations, congratulations, social promotion, and approval, and as well as formal sanctions such as award, bonus, or prize. Both types of sanction play a role in social control, whether you consider the breaking of norm merely an accused matter that depend on your perspective. In short, the term deviance refer to all violations of social rule regarding less of their seriousness. We must consider deviance from within the group own framework, for it is their meaning that underlie their behavior. Now let's move to the last point. It's about com- competing explanation of deviance, sociobiology, physiology, and sociology. There are three competitions of explanation of deviance. The first one is about sociobiology. Uh, is look for explanation within people. They assume that people have general text predispositions, and sociology argue that genetics have little influence on deviance. So there are three theories from um, Lombroso 1911, Wilson and Hampstead 1985, Gosens 2007. Um, the first theory is about low intelligence led to crime. The second theory is about the XY chromosome and extra female chromosome in male that can lead to crime. And the last theory is about body type. People within squarish and muscular 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 bodies are more like to commit street crime. Example, mugging, rape, or burglary. Um, the second explanations of deviance is physiology. It's also focused on abnormality within the individual, which is personality disorder. The view that personality disturbance cause an individual to violent social norm. Their suppositions is that debating individual have debating personality and that subconscious motive drive people to deviance. And last but not least is sociology, as depute that deviant individual fit a particular personality. Sociologists search for factors outside the individual. They look for social influence that recruit people to break norm. And this come to the end of my presentation. Let's move to Sokhang part.
Thank you, Nita, and good afternoon, lecturer and everybody again. My name is Jansul Heng, and I'll be presenting about the symbolic interactionist perspective. Now that after we learn about deviance and the competing explanation of deviance, we are now going to explore the symbolic interactionism perspective. We can learn that the basic principle of symbolic interactionism is that we are a thinking being who act according to interpretation of situation. Thus, we have come up with three theory. The first theory being a differential association theory. This theory is going against the idea of biology or personality is the source of deviance. Instead, sociologists stress our experience being in group. The extreme example of this can be looked at when a child decides to join street gang or join scout. It should be obvious that each will learn different attitude regarding deviance or conformity. For example, in the photo, we can see that being a scout associate crime with deviance, and being in a gang associate law abiding as deviance. Um, Edwin Sutherland had coined this term as differential association theory. From the different group we associate with, we learn to deviate from or to conform to society norms. And although his actual theory is more complicated, he basically said that based on which group we associate with, we will learn different messages in conformity or deviance. And although we might receive mixed messages, we would still choose to either conform or deviate. He even further explained where we can learn this behavior from. The first one being from the family. Since we all know that family is important for teaching us attitude, it is probably obvious too to you that the family is making a big difference whether you learn to deviance or conformity. As the example I brought up in the picture, if your parents have brought you to the store and start shoplifting, you will soon learn that shoplifting is normal and start to do it yourself as well. The second point being friend and neighborhood. Most people don't know the term differential association, but they do know how it works. Most parents want to move out of bad neighborhood because they know that if their kid have delinquent friend, they are likely to become delinquent too. In the picture, we can see that a group of people drinking beer, smoking at a night. These are behavior influenced to each other by their delinquent friends. So, the reason their parents want to move out of the house is seem to be more reasonable. The third point being subculture. Subculture, when individuals share a particular form of deviance, they often form their own deviant subculture, a way of living that differs from the dominant culture and is based on that shared deviance. Within the deviant subculture, individuals adopt new norms and values and sometimes feel alienated from the larger society. They end up relying on more on the group to which they feel they are most belong to. And if one of the members choose to do something that are considered societal norms, which would be looked at from the group as deviant act instead. Um, as an example to this, we can look at the mafia society. The member of the mafia intertwine the idea of manliness with violence and killing. Some killings are done to enforce norm. A member of a mafia who gives information to the police, for example, has violated the omerta, which is the mafia vow of secrecy. This offense can never be tolerated, and for it threatening the very existence of the group, which the mafia have to resort to kill the person who go to the police. This mafia killing further illustrate on how relative deviance is. Although killing is deviant in mainstream society, for members of the mafia, not killing after a certain rule are broken, such as when someone squeals to the cop, are considered deviant acts. We can go and look at the symbolic interactionist take on the prisoner of socialization as well. An issue that come up over and over again in sociology is whether we are prisoner of socialization. Symbolic interactionists stress that we are we are not a mere pawn of in the hand of other. Instead, we are not destined to think and act as our group dictate. Rather, we help to produce our own orientation to life by joining one group rather than another. For example, we help to shape ourselves. This could be bring up an example for if we decide to go to college to pursue our career, we can help us one future. But if we decide to commit crime and start stealing instead, we can have another future ahead of us. That concludes the differential association theory. Then we move on to the control theory. The control theory is made to explain when we have the urge to become hostile or get ourselves in trouble. We often manage our feeling to keep ourselves out of trouble. The sociologist Walter Reckless, who had developed control theory, stated that there are two systems that work to prevent our motivation to deviate. The first system being the inner control. The inner control are internalized thought process such as sense of morality, conscience, religious belief, or religious belief. People may also refrain from doing acts of deviance because they fear punishment or couldn't live with the guilt that would come from acting outside of society norms. Inner control represents a sort of internalized morality. And as for the outer control, it consists of people in our life who encourage us to not stray. They could be family member, friend, or even police officer. Whoever they are, they influence us to conform to society expectation. A person who is tempted to engage in a deviant act can resist that temptation by imagining how others would react to his or her behavior. With this, we can also look at the Travis Hershey control theory. The sociologist Travis Hershey had elaborated on the control theory that the stronger our bonds are with society, the more effective our inner control are. Bonds are based on attachment, which is our affection and respect for people who conform to mainstream norm. There's also commitment, which is having a stake in society that you don't want to risk, such as a respected place in your family, or a good standing in at college, or a good job. There's also involvement, which is participating in approved activity. And lastly, there's belief, the conviction that a certain action are morally wrong. This theory can be summarized as self-control. The key to learn self-control is socialization. And that's come to the end of my part of the presentation. We move on to the next presenter of this presentation.
Thank you, Sokhang, and good afternoon, teachers and classmates. My name is Im Sejing. I'm now presenting the last but not least, labeling theory. So, labeling theory focuses on the significance of reputations. We can see here on the screen, and the theory is divided to three main points. The first is rejecting labels. The second one is impressing labels. And the last one is the powers of labels. So let's get into the first main point is rejecting labels, or we can say how people neutralize deviance. So our sociologists Chris Hamsick and David Metzger studied about boy, and they found that the boy used 5 techniques of neutralization to deflect society norms. So the first technique is called denial of responsibility. When the boys are at fault, they don't admit what they did, and they try to make quite interesting excuses to conceal their fault from others. So this is called denial of responsibility. The second technique is called denial of injury. Even if the boy acknowledge that what they did is illegal, they still try to deny by explaining that what they did isn't wrong because no one get hurt. So this is called denial of injury. The third technique is called denial of victims. For example, the boys want to revenge their mean teacher. They vandalize their teacher's car by writing road phrases on it. And when they get caught, they try to protect self-concept by affirming that their teachers deserve what they did or what they got. So this is called denial of the victim, which means that the teacher did something bad to the boy first, and then they need to get paid. The fourth technique is called condemnations of condemners. It is mean that when the boy get caught, they are doing something wrong, they don't admit it again. By saying that no one has the right to judge them, they might ask, like, who are you to judge me, or who are you to accuse me of something? So this is called the condemnation or condemners, that the boy used this technique to deflect the society norms. And the last but not least technique is called compelling to higher loyalties. This technique the boy used it to conceal their fault too when their friend get into a fight, and so do the boy. They still admit that they are not wrong because they need to be loyal to their friends by giving a hand in the fight. So it is called appealing to higher loyalties. So at the end of the first main point, so let's get into the second main point, which is about impressing labels. We have the example of outlaw bikers too. Our sociologist Mark Watson did participant observations with outlaw bikers, and he found that the outlaw bikers see the world as hostile, weak, and effeminate. And the biker have no fear to break the norm or get in trouble or even treat women as sex workers. And they shock people by their appearance and behavior. And they really devolve in a deviant identity by regarding themselves as loser. And this is called an impress of deviance. Lastly, or the last main point of our labeling theory is the power of label. We will discuss about the power of it. So we have two groups of high school boys. One is the saint and another one is the roughneck. Teacher called the saint as headed for success, but they call the roughneck as headed for trouble. Sociologist Chambliss concluded that this reason is due to social class. The saints are from a respectable middle class family, while the roughneck are from less respectable working class family. Here is the scenario that we need to understand more about the power levels. The son have a car and they can like drink and they go to the bar for dancing. No one will see and what they are doing. The roughneck, in contrast, drink beers at the corner of the street because they have no car to drive around. And then the cops who are patrolling the street, we assume that the roughneck are gathering to do anything bad. So this is an example showing that people provide different expectations to these two groups of boys. Label can lead to a judgment of some aspect. In terms of other assumptions, it somehow affects the opportunity of individual because they are treated differently. Through the explanation, we can see that the labels is very powerful to show the self-identity and the behavior of individual in our society. So that is the end of our presentation. Thank you very much for paying attention.